Welcome to the GCI Conference Center. Please enter your access code followed. Thank you. Please stand by. If you are the chairperson, press the star key now. Your conference will begin when the chairperson arrives. Please wait. Welcome to the GCI Conference Center. Please enter your access code followed by the pound sign. Thank you. Please stand by. You are being placed into conference in listen-only mode. There are 60 participants in the conference.
Okay. Well, great, Jeremy. We'll appreciate your coming, and hopefully, I guess if anybody in the audience has got questions, they can catch you out in the lobby. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, look at that. We're on schedule. So I'll move on to the director's briefing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. AMCO has sought approval from the Office of Management and Budget and received that approval to hire a regulations specialist. This will be a dedicated staff member devoted to managing regulations projects for both the Marijuana Control Board and the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. These duties are currently being performed by our local government specialist, Jed Smith, but frankly, that was not what he was hired to do, and his role in outreach and education to local governments, licensees, and the public is vital. And so we're trying to free up him to do what he was actually hired for and have a regulations specialist to work on the multitude of regulations projects we have with both boards. We expect that position will be posted on Workplace Alaska probably next week. The board had asked at the last meeting to receive information on the distribution of half of the application fee to local governments throughout Alaska. So in the fiscal year 18, so July 1st of 17 to June 30th of 18, AMCO forwarded $115,600 to local governments. And that information is posted on our website under other marijuana resources, so the board can look at that at any time you wish. The current regulations project status is attached, as usual, to the report. So 2 issues related to transfer applications. In June, the board did direct the staff to prioritize transfer applications over new applications, and your reasoning for this related to ensuring that operating businesses that facilitate commerce and drive the tax revenue and pay the fees are able to remain operating. That it's important for these businesses not to have to wait 6 months to go through the process if the owner needs to retire or, has some other issue. So since June, the staff has been prioritizing those applications. However, we also have transfer applications submitted for licenses that actually haven't done operating, and so I wonder whether the board wants those to be prioritized as well, given that they're in the same situation as a new applicant who is not operating, is not paying taxes, and has been, again, waiting and usually paying rent in the queue. So that's a question for the board. And the other question is whether a applicant who has not yet received a license, so they're not in active pending inspection or active operating status, but is still in delegated status, may submit and have a transfer application processed. 3 AAC 306-045A states that a person may not receive or transfer a marijuana establishment license or a controlling interest in a marijuana establishment license without applying for and receiving written consent at of the board. So during the application process, and I think you're aware we have many statuses: new, initiated, under review, incomplete, complete, and delegated are all the statuses you go through before you get to an operating status, before you actually have a license issued to you. In the earlier points in the process, if the ownership of the application or of the business, of the entity that is applying for the application changes, the only way to deal with that is to do a rollback to the new status so that the applicant can modify the proposed ownership, and I think the board has discussed rollbacks in the past. So in a situation where an application is still in delegated status with no license yet being issued, should they be able to submit a transfer application, which are intended for when they are licensed? My recommendation would be that no transfer applications shouldn't be accepted until you're in licensed status. I know Ms. Weltine made a comment on this, and there's certainly multiple ways the board could decide to deal with this. You could, if you agree with that recommendation, you could say that that starts from now going forward. You can also, of course, deal with the issues that are on the agenda separately. So I don't know if you want to answer those questions now or wait until later to discuss them.
I kind of think maybe we should wait.
Okay.
There's some complexity to it.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it'd be good to see the further tabs and how those questions relate to the particular situations posed by the different applications before I feel comfortable making it.
Moving on, generally about once a year I try to provide you with some budget information. So here you can see the FY18 expenditures, authorized expenditures and actual expenditures, our FY19 authorized expenditures, and where we are actual through the end of September. And our revenue, the actual FY18 revenue and our FY19 through the end of September revenue, noting that the marijuana revenue does not include our the money that was provided from the general fund. There's a great deal of information in the next couple pages that I will go through that relates to a proposal that I brought up at the August meeting about whether or not the board wants to consider raising license fees. So AMCO has been receiving allocations of unrestricted general funds since, I think the first one was in 2015, to get the program up and running. And that amount of money has been tapering off as the program has become established and we have licensees to pay the fees, with the intention that that the marijuana program will be self-supporting from license and application fees in the way that the alcohol program is self-supporting from application and license fees. So this year, FY19, is the last year that we are scheduled to receive any unrestricted general funds, and we received a little over $500,000. Starting in FY20, we will receive no general fund allocation, and we will need to support ourselves entirely from application and license fees, with the caveat that AMCO has been authorized to keep any fees that we have collected that we have not needed to expend because we've had general fund. We've been able to keep it in what's called this carry forward account, and that account is there in case there is a shortfall in the amount that we collect in FY20 or subsequent years to cover our budget. So it's not there as a slush fund, but it's there to cover shortfalls should anticipated revenue not meet anticipated expenses. The other thing is that the legislature has made it clear in intent language in their operating budget that they expect the industry and the marijuana program to begin paying back approximately $4.5 million that over, in 15 or 16 to 19 has been given to AMCO in unrestricted general funds to get the program on its feet. So they haven't set a schedule. They haven't said we want X dollars a year. They haven't said we want this all back within a certain period of time, but they do request that a report be delivered to them by January 1st, 2020 to sort of give them an update on how that's going. So, trying to predict how much money we're going to take in and whether or not there should be an increase in license fees to accommodate both needs, AMCO program needs to fulfill our obligations to our licensees, and also to begin collecting money to send back to the general fund. So, you're trying to anticipate the future, so you're never really sure whether what you've predicted is going to come to pass. But here's what I've predicted. So as of mid-September, when I was working on this, we had 249 licenses in active operating status. We had 93 licenses or applications that were either in active pending inspection or delegated status, 96 applications that were in tabled, complete, incomplete, or under review status, and 247 applications in initiated status. So if we assume that of the 249 active operating licenses, 90% of those will renew next year. And that's hopefully a slightly conservative number. All active operating licenses renewed in 2017, which was the first renewal period, and in 2018, 97.7% of active operating licenses renewed. But we do recognize that, with more licenses becomes more supply, and there may be issues related to that. I have made the assumption that 70% of the licenses that are currently in active pending inspection, delegated, tabled, complete, incomplete, and under review will become active operating and will renew next year. I don't have a scientific basis for 70%, but, the board sees applications every agenda that have been in pending inspection or delegated status for 6 months or a year, so you recognize that not everybody who ends up getting approved actually does become an operating business, and so certainly we've tried to make that a relatively conservative figure. And then the assumption is that 10% of applications in initiated status will become active operating and renew in 2019, and that's a very low number, but it's reflecting the fact that the applications that are currently in the queue, of which we have about 80, it's going to take, the board gets to between 25 and 35 applications a meeting, and so it's going to take some time to get through that queue. So the number of applications that are still in initiated status, in that they haven't submitted all the documents needed, the number of those that are going to become active operating by end of June next year is going to be pretty low. So if we assume that that leads to about 383 licenses renewing next year, that will be $1,550,900 in application and license fees. That estimate may be a little high because some licensees miss the June 30th deadline and they renew late in July or August. And if that happens, then the fees that they pay starting July 1st go into the FY20 revenue, so not FY19 revenue. So again, that number is, it's an estimate, could be higher, could be lower. In addition to application and license fees, AMCO collects handler permit fees and fees for making changes to diagrams or operating plans. And in FY18, those totaled $226,000. So I'm just assuming that number is static. It likely will go up, probably will go up some from a change fee perspective as more licensees come online, but I don't know what will happen with handler permits, so I'm just leaving that static. So if we assume that same amount will be collected in FY19, we're looking at a total revenue from the marijuana program of approximately $1.7 million in FY19. if AMCO is to add resources to improve services to licensees and to begin to repay the general fund, the board should consider increasing license fees, as again was briefly discussed in August. The board may want to consider only raising the license fee at the time of renewal so that the new license fee applied to applicants who have not yet started to operate their business and thus generate an income would not actually be raised. So I've provided you with some estimates here, and in case my column headings were not clear, in the second chart on page 4 of my report, the leftmost column of dollar figures is if you increase, so right now, I think I got that backwards. So you have your testing, your limited cultivation, and your concentrate only license fee is $1,000, and your standard cultivation, your product manufacturing, and your retail license fee is $1,000 or $5,000. So if you increased your $1,000 license fee by $500 to $1,500, and you increased your $5,000 license fee by $1,000 to $6,000, that would affect, of those 383 licenses that we were talking about, that would increase the revenue that we would take in by $322,500. If you increased your $1,000 license fee by $1,000 to $1,500, and you increased your $5,000 license fee by $2,000 to $7,000, you would increase, and this is for all licensees, new and renewal, you would increase the revenue by $645,000. And then the two columns on the right are if you only applied those same increases to renewals. You would increase, if the smaller increase would generate an additional approximately $300,000, and the larger increase would generate approximately $600,000. So should the board wish to entertain increasing a license fee, that would need to be through a regulations project. You would open a project, we would draft language for you and bring it to you. You would accept it or modify it, put it out for public comment, accept public comment. So this is something that would go through a public process, and certainly probably should you begin that now and pursue it and eventually adopt it, would probably end up becoming effective maybe at the beginning of the next fiscal year, July 1st next year, would be my guess. The 2019 meeting schedule is provided here for you. We have been alerted that November meetings coincide with AML, Alaska Municipal League, so we are looking at making a date change for the November meetings. So I will provide that information to you at the next meeting. But other than that, the February, May, July, and September meetings all look pretty, unless anyone has a major issue, we think those are pretty firm. The next meeting of this board is on December 20th and 21st in Anchorage. Applications must be complete, and any other documents for the board must be submitted to our office by November 30th to be on that agenda. You may recall that you scheduled an oral public hearing for the on-site consumption draft regulations for December 19th, which is a Wednesday, in Anchorage, so we'll be publicizing the location of the hearing and the board meetings. I think they might be in two different places. I can't exactly remember, but we'll publicize that information. And then, as usual, here's the retail sales figures and the taxes through the most recently available information. Thank you.
Okay, Brandon.
Yeah, thanks, Erica, for putting this together. So, looking at the schedule of these here, this fourth column that increases the revenue from current by $604,000 and puts the burden solely on the already operating licensees. Is that increase, the estimated increase, is that enough to cover us for what we anticipate that we need to do as far as providing all of our own fees and beginning to pay back the legislature? I think we were in one of those discussions together with them where they were pretty firm about wanting their money back. So,
Through the chair, Mr. Emmett, it really depends on what sort of resources that we add to AMCO. And I can't really discuss specifics of that with the board because we discuss what we see our needs are with the commissioner's office, who discusses it with the governor's office, and then the governor will come out with the governor's budget in which the governor will make certain requests, and that'll be our request. So it really depends. Certainly, I believe that that would cover our current expenses with more left over.
Well, thanks.
Any other questions or comments on the director's report? And do you want us to give you some guidance on starting in on a project to increase the renewal fees? Is that what you said?
If the board wishes to do that, you could do that now, or you could do that at the regulation section A3.
Okay,
it's up to you.
Maybe we can wait for that. That's okay with everybody. All right, you have another item on here for us. What do you want to talk about the regulations projects? We have the spreadsheet here from you, and we have regulations on the agenda. So let's just move on to your resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At I think it was 2 meetings ago, there were some issues with an applicant who had brought his personal use marijuana onto his proposed licensed premises, and we felt that that was not the intent of the regulations, and the board felt that that wasn't really clear, and discussed creating a resolution to say that the intention of the board is that commercial use marijuana and personal use marijuana be maintained, or be separate, be kept separate. So you instructed me to draft a resolution for your consideration, which I have done. And what this essentially says is an applicant for a license may not bring or have marijuana grown and possessed for personal use at a location proposed to be a licensed premises, which would mean once they start their application process, that becomes an location proposed to be a licensed premises for a commercial facility, with a couple of exceptions. Those exceptions would be that if the applicant is for a limited cultivation facility that is located in their dwelling, that they can keep their personal marijuana there until such time as they are approved by the board, and after that, they would have to keep their personal marijuana separate and out of the area that is licensed premises, or that is approved by the board for licensed premises. The second exception would be a testing facility, which is authorized to test personal marijuana. So, I can take my personal grow to the testing facility and ask for a test, and that's perfectly legal. So, testing facilities, of course, could have personal use marijuana on the licensed premises at any time, and would be expected to just make sure that they're not, commingling. There's no reason they would ever commingle samples from different people, but just sort of stating it for the record. And those would be the 2 exceptions. So this is for your consideration, modifications, acceptance, rejection, whatever you want.
So I think this does help clarify things a bit. The needing to get rid of the personal grow plants when they initiate an application, and unless they are limited in their home, seems like it could be more restrictive. I could see a situation where if someone had their mother plants in a facility that they propose and that they were under what is allowed in 17.3, that they would have to then get rid of those genetics and then somehow reacquire them once they actually got their license. Like say if they were growing in a warehouse behind their house or a garage behind their house. So I think that the intent here is good, but it might need a little tweaking before I could support it.
Do you have any suggested tweak?
I do not at this time. I've been mulling it over.
Sure. Okay. Let's we hold this in abeyance till the next meeting, that's not gonna,
Perhaps Mr. Emmett and I could
yeah.
work on a new draft.
Yeah, I'd be pleased to work on
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't seem particularly problematic to me, but, yeah, let's go ahead and play with it. Let's bring this to the next meeting. Okay, is that all you have for us, Director?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. Then we will move on to, the enforcement, well, are we ready for like a short break?
A brief Eddie's.
Yeah, let's try to get as close to 10:30 as we can.